I got involved with environmentally efficient energy with the concept of the fuel catalyst several years ago, back in 2003. We were preparing for deployment to Iraq. I had over 200 soldiers, $6 billion worth of equipment. I had an entire fleet of trucks, aircraft, the whole 9 yards. We were getting ready to go to Iraq, and I got a call from a friend of the family, Senator Wyden from Oregon. Asked me if I would look at a product on behalf of the military that was said to eliminate pollution and to increase the fuel economy. And frankly, I was busy, and I thought to myself, well, okay, he wants me to look at somebody who's got snake oil. He assured me that this was a legitimate, to please take a look at it. So two gentlemen showed up. I provided the vehicles and the drivers. I provided everything from a Humvee to a 2.5-ton to a 5-ton truck. They got about 5 vehicles, and I gave them 10 drivers. And so they could drive these vehicles around the clock. The intent was to do a 10-day study to see what the effects of this product had on the vehicles. Obviously, the vehicles I gave him were not vehicles that were ready to go on deployment. These were vehicles that were waiting to go into maintenance. The 2 vehicles in particular, the 2.5-ton and the 5-ton, the larger diesel vehicles, they have turbochargers on them. In the military, we have turbochargers to provide us power when we need to get out of there at the bottom end. And we put turbochargers on these large diesel Caterpillar diesel engines. The problem with that is that the turbocharger is actually run by the exhaust. Those of you familiar with turbochargers will understand that it recycles the exhaust, uses the exhaust to increase power to the engine. Well, in a diesel engine, the carbon coming out of that exhaust, as you know, the black smoke belching out of a diesel engine, we've all been stuck behind a truck driver and just trying to breathe that stuff. That is what causes the turbo. After about 2,000 to 3,000 miles, the turbocharger actually seizes up because of the carbon buildup from the diesel engine. And we in the military just accept that as a cost of doing business, and we know that every 2,000 to 3,000 miles we're going to have to take the vehicle into service, disassemble the turbocharger, open it up, scrape out all the carbon, put it back together, put it back on the truck. It's a several-day process, but we accept that as a cost of doing business. So these vehicles went out on their drive. I went back to work, focusing on other things, and 3 or 4 days later, my first sergeant came in and asked me to come out and take a look at this. I went out, and the 2.5 and the 5-ton were sitting there. They were not running. He climbed into the 5-ton and started it up. Well, the first thing I noticed was there was no smoke coming out of this huge Caterpillar diesel engine. And I thought, okay, they raised an eyebrow. I thought that was curious. What was more important for those of you that have a turbocharger, or even a supercharger for that matter, you know what they sound like when you stomp on the engine. You'll get a whining noise, and you'll know that the turbocharger is working. Well, these turbochargers, which were not working 3 days prior, are now working. I could hear the whine of the turbo as he stepped on the gas. Very, very intriguing. He jumped over in the 2.5-ton. He started it up. Same thing. The turbocharger was working. And I asked him, had we gotten the vehicles into maintenance? He said no. He said, we hit about the 700-mile mark in these vehicles on the product, and both the turbochargers broke loose and started working on their own. And I asked him, well, how can that be? And I got it all explained to me because I was learning back then. They showed me that what had happened was the carbon, because the fuel, the diesel, was being burned completely, the carbon had been eliminated from the inside of the turbocharger. Not only the inside of the turbocharger, but the inside of the pistons, the piston cylinders, the inside of the exhaust pipes. All of the carbon was eliminated, and as the product continued to be mixed with the fuel, you were actually eliminating no carbon out of your exhaust. So no carbon monoxide, very intriguing. I don't have soldiers that are going to have carbon monoxide poisoning. So I was very intrigued with that. What this meant to me was a reduction in maintenance. My vehicles were available around the clock. They weren't in the motor pool being worked on, being taken apart and having the turbochargers scraped out. The manpower could be utilized elsewhere. The second and third order of effects to all this were just, to me, is what got me interested in the product. Later on that day, we experimented with the fuel additive in a turbine engine. The results were the same. The turbine engine quieted down, less vibration. The heat signature dropped by about 400 degrees in the turbine engine. And again, when they turned the turbine engine off, I could wipe my finger inside the stack and there was no carbon buildup. Since that time, I have been driving on the product for over 6 years now. I will not drive without it. I noticed the difference in my vehicle. I noticed the difference in the performance. I actually had a vehicle that was 15 years old and I was driving the product in it. And the engine, when I took it in for its emissions test, the emissions test had better results than when that engine came out of the factory. That's a 15-year-old car. So since that time, I have been sold on E3. I've become part of the environmentally efficient energy family, and I've spent every waking moment I have knocking on doors trying to get out the word. The solution to our pollution problems and the solution to our dependency on foreign oil exists. It's here today, and we can use this product right now to bridge the gap between where we are today and where we need to be in the future.